You are making analogies between the animal world and the human world. But as I said, that demarcation that you talk about in the book is very clear, even though there are similarities between both worlds, the animal world and the human world. And you're talking about animals being genetically programmed as well to do certain things, which as human beings, we can do as well. Can you put a quote in by Abdu'l-Baha in the book. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? And why did you specifically put that quote by Abdu'l-Baha where he's talking about, I think he's also talking about this demarcation as well between the animal world and the human world?
Yeah, there's many passages from the works of Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah which focus on this and approach it from different angles, and it's quite extensive when you research into what they've written or what they've said. But here's a lovely quotation which is in the book on the demarcation between animal and human intelligence. So Abdu'l-Baha said, "The power of the intellect is one of God's greatest gifts to men. It is the power that makes him a higher creature than the animal. For whereas century by century and age by age, man's intelligence grows and becomes keener, that of the animal remains the same. They are no more intelligent today than they were 1,000 years ago. Is there a greater proof than this needed to show man's dissimilarity to the animal creation? It is surely as clear as day." But I'd just like to carry on with that. I think this can be understood alongside the fact that we haven't come to a fuller understanding about animal intelligence at this time. So this statement is not to curtail any scientific investigation into animal intelligence, because we still do not know the limitations of their intelligence. But what we do know, taken from Abdu'l-Baha's statement, is that there is a limitation, there is a demarcation between, which is entirely absent in humans.
Yeah, it's interesting, this demarcation between the animal world and the human world. So what do you think, you've just spoken about it, what makes the human race so unique compared to the animal world? Because a lot of scientists, humanists, Darwinianists will say that we are just evolved animals. And that's very shortly, we will segue onto that subject about is human nature inherently aggressive or not. But they will say evolutionists will say that we are just evolved animals. So what makes the human race special?
Yes, so throughout the Baha'i text, it's mentioned many times that it's our rational faculties that differentiate us from the animal kingdom. And the rational faculties are composed of our ability to think, our ability to comprehend or understand, our abilities to imagine, our abilities to memorize many things which are not physical, but they're abstract. As human beings, we have these wonderful rational faculties, but animals don't have them in the same sense that we do, and they're the captives of nature. We are not the captives of nature. We can use our imagination, for instance, to invent things, to take people to the moon and start exploring the universe. There's not one animal in existence that will ever get even near that, no matter how much you can think of training them, okay, or trying to develop their intelligence that obviously exists but is limited in relation to what humans have. And I think of an analogy, that you can't cultivate a parsnip to become a poodle.
Interesting. Parsnips into poodles. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because what we're saying is that the demarcation is that between these categories of existence, mineral, vegetable, animal, and human, there's an implication that there's no demarcation between animal and human beings. And it implies as well there's no demarcation between an animal and a vegetable. And that's why I say that it's silly to think that you can cultivate a parsnip to become a poodle. It's not going to happen. So we're not going to be able to train, educate an animal to become a human being, no matter what intelligence they have, of which we're finding out more about it day after day. But to think that they can have the imagination to do everything that we can do, and we've been on the planet evolving over millions of years in much less time than animals have. They've been here millions and millions of years before us. So you would think that somewhere along the line that they would have developed, each animal would have developed certain intellectual capabilities that we now call human.
So what's your thoughts on evolutionary biology then? That the theory is that we have evolved from animals. I know this is going off on a bit of a tangent, but still talking about this, the dichotomy, the demarcation between animals or the animal brain and the human brain. So what are your thoughts on evolutionary biology, Darwinianism, when it talks about we have evolved from one species to another?
Yes, so again, these are not my thoughts or teachings or understandings, and I hope I'm sharing them with you in a way which is clear to the guidance that we have and insights from the Baha'i texts all the time. So the main point being is that human beings have always been human beings from the start and have been evolving in the womb of the world over millions of years, but we've always been human beings. We haven't been animals evolving. Just as I said before, like vegetables are not evolving or improving in some way to become animals. And this evolution is that we may have looked like animals in the past, may have been involved in many animal characteristics and ways of surviving. But that doesn't mean to say that we are animals by nature. It's just an evolutionary process that we're going through. You can see a child in the womb of its mother, for instance, when you take various scans of a child there, from the earliest days right until it's about to be born, there are many physiological changes that are occurring there. And most of the time, it doesn't look like a human being at all. When you think, you can trace it back and so on, you get the scans where it can look like a... It can look
prehistoric dinosaurs.
Yeah. For all the differences that the shapes and developmental phases is going through, you can't say it's not a human being there. It's a human being which is developing evolutionary in a small scale on the microcosmic scale in the womb of the mother, just like human beings will be developing evolutionary wise over the millions of years on a macrocosmic scale.
Can you expand upon the relationship between we spoke about this before in the last podcast, which is about the soul, the relationship between the soul and the brain, or the body, which the brain is a part of course, the body and the soul?
Yes. So what we're looking at here now is, which was introduced last time, as you say, that we have a soul. As human beings, we have a soul. And that soul has been created by our Maker. And at the time of conception, we read in the Baha'i text that the soul comes into existence at the time of conception. And then the soul itself starts activating or causing the embryo to grow and has its link with the embryo and with everything else that we regard as human, which is not physical. So the soul itself is a non-physical reality. Many people have said, well, if I can't see it, I can't feel it, I can't touch it, then it doesn't exist.
If I can't drink it, it's not there.
Yeah. So Abdu'l-Baha says, he says, this is how we should answer that type of assumption. And he says, when materialists question, where is the soul, what is it? We cannot see it, neither can we touch it. This is how we must answer them, Abdu'l-Baha says. However much the mineral may progress, it cannot comprehend the vegetable world. Now, that lack of comprehension does not prove the non-existence of the plant. And it's the same as us now, that because we cannot see the connection between the soul and the body, doesn't mean that it's non-existent. It is existence there. And it is, the soul itself is an abstraction, just like the word intelligence. You can't put intelligence into your car and take it somewhere.
I can. It's cheaper.
Yeah. So all the many things which are so important and for us as human beings demark us, set us up as human beings that are non-physical. Our ability to be wise, to be patient with each other, to be magnanimous.
All the virtues,
yeah. Kindness in the way in which we can think about being kind, and not just an instinctual thing as an animal, shall we say, looking after their young, where they appear to be kind then, but to categorize it and put in the same category as a human. The relationship with the young is exactly the same for mothers as it is for animals. That relationship, but there's a big difference between the two. Although, of course, there is a physical animal connection.